Hello everyone, welcome to a World of Warship Blitz video. Today's video is another of the free versus fee, or the fee versus free, whichever way around I put it in the title. So today we are looking at a couple more German ships. A lot of the German ships have a free versus fee option because they basically had a couple of good historical counterparts like the Bismarck and Tirpitz, which I've done previously. So today we're looking at the Admiral Hipper and the Prinz Eugen. Originally I was going to look at my default stats, but I've actually played a few games specifically in these to see how they match up. But first of all, let's do an actual comparison of what the differences are between the Admiral Hipper and the Prinz Eugen, which is going to be mercifully short, because basically they are very, 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 very similar. The Admiral Hipper having slightly more hit points, an edge of about 236, with 34,456 versus the 34,220 of the Prinz Eugen. The Prinz Eugen does have better citadel protection of 13.75% and better damage reduction of 11.03%, but those are both entirely due to the fact that the elite skill selected for this is the improved armored belt, because there wasn't anything better. So basically they are exactly the same. For the speed, the top speed is exactly the same acceleration. Ironically, they have exactly the same traverse speed, so 6.86 degrees per second for the Admiral Hipper versus 6.86 degrees per second for the Prinz Eugen. Now the Prinz Eugen doesn't have the same modules as the Admiral Hipper, so I'll probably remove that second equipment slot and add something else in. So the print, as you can see with the Admiral Hipper, if I can open it up, you can see that we have the steering gear modification 1, steering gear modification 2. Whereas with the Prinz Eugen, I've tried to build that a little bit more for range, and it has the deck protection modification 1 to reduce the number of fires, and steering gear modification 1. The fact that these ended up with the same traverse speed means that potentially the Prinz Eugen is actually the more agile of the two ships. From a guns perspective, they are exactly the same. The only noticeable difference is the Admiral Hipper has a turret traverse speed of 10.8 degrees per second rather than 9 degrees per second of the Prinz Eugen. That is simply because of the elite skill bonus, which I've selected as turret traverse, which I am thinking to spend gold to undo and put into something else, because neither of these ships outturn their turrets, and to be fair, I am obviously finding that the citadel protection on the Prinz Eugen is actually quite useful, and we'll get to that shortly. Both ships have torpedoes. Those torpedoes are exactly the same, just the short-range German torpedoes, if I can bring those up. Relatively quickly reloading at 40 seconds, and torpedo range at 5.62, and that's entirely due to the historical camo. Now both of these ships have historical camo, and interestingly enough, although the Prinz Eugen currently has my my Gneisenau commander in it, because I was busy with the normal commander I have in it, strangely enough I stuck my Franz von Hipper into the Hipper, because at the time I had two tier 8 options with the Tirpitz and the Bismarck, and only one tier 8 option with the Admiral Hipper, but both of them I play with Franz von Hipper. The main benefit being that it tells me how much I'm being targeted. So we haven't quite got him high enough to get the close quarters combat expert. Now that's useful in these two ships, or the armored piercing improvement. So with some additional German ships premiums coming into my my personal account, that will change over time. So essentially very similar ships. Let's go have a look at some performance. So I got two sets of statistics here. One is the sort of raw statistics, where the historical record of my Admiral Hipper came through. Now, basically what happened there is that I had a fairly good run with the Prinz Eugen. That's because it's new and I'm practicing it and I'm being careful and all the rest of it, and relatively poor performance in the Admiral Hipper. They didn't feel that different, and I wondered if there was anything in it. So what I did was I went and played 15 games in both. I was trying to get to 20, but hey, I tapped out at 15. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at those stats, because that provides, I suppose, a sort of control. So out of 15 games, interestingly enough, the win rate for both of them was exactly the same at 66.67. So 10 out of 15 games were wins. Now, some of those losses were horrible losses, don't get me wrong, and some of those losses in the Admiral Hipper were me overextending, which seems to be what causes my rather significantly lower win rate in the Admiral Hipper over the last 12 months. The Prince, so the Prinz Eugen and has the better destruction ratio at 2.14. So being sunk 7 times for sinking 15 enemies. The Admiral Hipper is lower at 1.57. Now, across 15 battles, that could be, that's not a lot of battles, right? But it gives a bit of a feel. It just seems like I just don't quite get into the same positions with the Admiral Hipper. I'm not sure what the story is there. Damage, believe it or not, the Admiral Hipper comes in higher at 38,000 average damage per battle rather than 35 for the Prinz Eugen. So essentially high damage ratio out of the Prinz Eugen, probably going for ships that are a bit sicker. Better average damage out of the Admiral Hipper, being maybe a little bit more fleet conscious. Okay, the next item to talk about is the average number of kills per battle. So for the Prinz Eugen, it generally takes down 1 ship every battle. That's its average, 15 battles, 15 ships, whereas the Admiral Hipper is at 0.73. Now, if we compare that with my Leanders and some of those previous ships, that's actually quite low. So that average kills per battle is a good way of viewing its work rate. I probably, once I've done a few of these, will get a bit of a feel for what stats tell you what ships are actually performing well and what aren't. But these ships seem to have problems knocking down enemies. Now, they have good average damage, but the average damage is around about their hit point total anyway, or slightly above. So, yeah, how much are they working? Most valuable player rate, the one that comes ahead there of the two is, well, the Prinz Eugen has 20% most valuable player rate, 3 out of the 15 battles. Whereas 4 out of the 15 battles, the Admiral Hipper was most valuable player, 26.67%. So when I concentrate and focus on actually what I'm doing, my Admiral Hipper work rate or win rate and stats rate comes right up, because we'll talk a little bit about what its default was. As for the survival rate, the Admiral Hipper, poor fella, is at 46.67%, so over half the time it doesn't come out of battle alive. The Prinz Eugen, probably because I play it a little bit more at range, which may explain why it doesn't get sunk as much, is 53.33%. So basically, it has a higher survival rate per battle than the Admiral Hipper. Right, so actually that doesn't make sense at all, because both of them should be 46.67. I'm not sure what's going on with my maths there. Both of them have the same survival rate because they've all been sunk the same number of times. Right, let's go for a bit more of an historical view. So the Prinz Eugen I've now taken from 15 to 23 games. So its win rate is at 69.57%, so I am improving over time. That's up from 66, so it's a 3% improvement. Its destruction ratio has dropped to 2, and there is a bit of a honeymoon period when you first get ships and you're careful with them and all the rest of it. That sometimes you can sort of go through a high to start with and then a bit of a low before it stabilizes. Its destruction ratio has come down from 2.14 down to 2, which is a slight decrease, but its average damage has gone up by about 2,000, from 35,000 to 37,000. The number of enemies destroyed per battle is slowly tapering off at 0.87, and And interestingly enough, the Admiral Hipper over the course of last year was at 0.8. Most valuable player ratio is stabilizing at around about 43%. Okay, which is exactly the same as the previous year's performance on the Admiral Hipper, which is about 44%. So those 15 battles where I was concentrating represent maybe a bit of a high point, whereas on average they're very comparable across most valuable player ratio, the number of enemies destroyed in battle. Over the last year, my average damage with the Admiral Hipper has been 38,305 versus 37,199 with the Prinz Eugen. So over time, they're fairly similar. The Prinz Eugen consistently across both sets of stats is higher on the destruction ratio. Now the win rate is where the rubber hits the road, and that's where the carelessness and the overextension that I experience in the Admiral Hipper comes out, because the average yearly win rates, although over the 15 battles I got 66%, so 2/3 of the battles won, over the course of the last 12 months I got 46%. The Prinz Eugen currently, after 23 battles, sitting at 69%. So that doesn't mean that the Admiral Hipper is a bad ship, because when I do a like-for-like comparison, it comes up very similar. What it means is that, there's a bit of a problem with my game style, and part of that may be the number of ships that I have. I have an enormous number of ships, so I keep anything above tier 7 and above, because if I want to do a video, it's pretty expensive to buy back. So what that means is that I do sort of hop around in ships quite a lot, and I am trying to grind the Russian DD line, the French BB line slowly, maybe I've got the Russian cruiser line also lined up and sort of in my favorites, and I'm trying to get some of the honors missions done for some of my premiums. So essentially there's a lot going on, and what that means is when I drop in the Admiral Hipper, it does require a specific style of play, which means that it does does show in my win rates. But what that by the way, what's happened is that this can be reflected. So over the last year compared with the years before, my win rate for the Admiral Hipper at 44% is dropped by 7%, down from 53%. So that's just a sign that I'm not playing the ship, and when I get into it, I'm not giving myself enough time to familiarize before I jump on to the next thing. Don't get me started on the New Orleans, where the win rate, because I wasn't familiar with the ship, dropped by 18%. So this is something I've seen before. So how does this reflect free versus fee on these ships? Well, basically I would probably say that they are very much equivalent. Probably the major difference between the Admiral Hipper and the Prinz Eugen is that the Prinz Eugen will earn more. You can use it as a trainer. It does look very nice with its historical camo. It does have the defensive AA. They both have the same AA stats. It just, with the defensive AA, the AA stat that get bumped up temporarily. Fee versus free, if you're budget conscious, definitely free, because you're not gaining anything much with the fee. But the Prinz Eugen is a nice ship, and if you like the Admiral Hipper but feel that it's a bit of a waste playing it because you're not really earning so much, then the Prinz Eugen, if you can grab it, may be the way to go, because it is a very nice looking ship. It performs every bit as well as the Admiral Hipper, or maybe slightly better, but there's no compelling benefit of the Prinz Eugen over the Admiral Hipper. So from my perspective, it's nice and probably a bit of a relief to see that the premium ships provide a variety of experience, not a benefit that not a substantial benefit that's unavailable to those that decide to grind through the tech tree line. So well done Wargaming for setting up the ship so that there's in such a way that the premiums aren't always the better versions of the tech tree ships. Anyway, I hope that was educational and helps make any decisions you may have around Admiral Hipper and Prinz Eugen. Both are, in the meta, challenging ships to play. Both are quite capable in their own way, but can be vulnerable at times. But both are very similar. So fee versus free, go with the free, but if you love it, get the fee and support the game. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.